Click the go live button. And all right, we are live. So Craig, firstly, thank you for being here. Everybody who is watching right now, welcome back to the IndieVerse. So happy to have you guys here. I am just honestly a little bit stalling because I'm just waiting to hear the YouTube stream kick in so I can mute it, and just so I can make sure that everything is live and well, because I have had some instances where StreamYard hasn't started. So I apologize, everyone. Just give me a moment here. There we go. I heard my voice in the background, so we are good. All right, everybody, welcome to episode 8, I believe it is, of the IndieVerse. Today, we have Craig A. Price on. And Craig, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time to be here. Basically, for anybody who is new to the IndieVerse, for anybody who has been at previous episodes, and just this might be a repeat, but how the show works is we do a bit of an interview, and you are welcome to ask any questions. So please let us know in the chat, and then we get to those questions at the end. But before we even get into any of the questions, I'm going to turn it over to Craig to introduce yourself a little bit, and let everybody know who you are, what you write, and what you're all about.
Yes, my name is Craig A. Price. Craig A. Price Jr. is what I write on my fantasy books. I'm a USA Today best-selling author. I have about 15 books published now, several short stories. I got 5 books in audio now. I love writing science fiction and fantasy, and got some other things I plan on writing. Like I had a long road trip move across the country. Little autobiography and stuff that I'm going to do in the future. Lots of projects in my head, just trying to tone them down can be difficult.
Okay, so this has nothing to do with, I guess, any of the questions I sent you, but how do you pick which one to do next? I'm always curious how people pick which one to do next.
Well, right now I'm in the middle of working on a sci-fi series, and that's because I've been really wanting to get into sci-fi. So I'm just trying to get 3 books in it complete and out of the way. And then my goal is to try and rein in my projects, because I have too many things open right now. So my Dragonia series, which is my most popular series, I'm actually hoping after I finish these couple of sci-fi books to write book 4 and 5 in the series to conclude it, so I can kind of get my head out of that world and get into the next world. And I want to try and just focus on 1 series at a time, or maybe at least just 2, so I can hop back and forth. But yeah, I'm really trying to rein down the projects and trying to get a little more focused. I did get this, there's a author planner, I think. There's an author planner that someone writes, Audrey Hughes or something like that. That's been kind of helped me try to ring myself in to focus on one thing at a time.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot. I can almost only exclusively focus on one thing at a time, but however, ideas pull me in different directions. So I was just curious. But I mean, 15 books published, that is just incredible. And just so you know, like, most of the folks who watch my channel, and myself included, are like newer or aspiring authors. So just hearing kind of, USA Today bestseller, like 15 books published, multiple series, like that's literally the dream. So I was just wondering, like, how was it that you got started in writing? Was it something you always wanted to do, something you fell into? Because I think it's so interesting to hear where people start and knowing where you're at now.
Yeah. So I remember in the 1st grade, I had this teacher, Mrs. Anderson, and I actually had her 1st and 2nd grade. And she made these books out of construction paper, and then there was a paper inside that was like blank on the top half. Then I threw those really big lines on the bottom half. We were first learning how to trace your letters and everything. And she took a bunch of those papers and put it in construction paper and just folded it all together and stapled the end of it. And she handed it out to every kid in the class and said, here, write a book. Draw a cover, make a title, open up the first page. The first top half that's blank. You draw a picture there, and then you have like 3 lines to write a sentence for each page. And so she handed those out to everybody, and I was in 1st grade. I wrote a book. I thought it was the coolest thing, and so I took it upon myself, and I made a bunch of them. I found more of that paper and construction paper, and I wish I still had all those books. I would love to read what kind of stuff I wrote in the 1st grade. But that's kind of how I got started in writing, and ever since then, I've always loved it. In grade school, I played like a lot of Command and Conquer and Warcraft, like 2 on the computer and stuff like that. And so I would write. Well, whenever my brother would allow me to use his computer, but I would write little stories of Command and Conquer, and I'll use my brother's names in it, and small little stories here and there. Some Star Wars fan fiction way back in the day, early internet on like fanfiction.net. Then I started writing a couple of originals on fictionpress.com, which was a spinoff of fan fiction. So I was on there pretty early, and at that point, I tried to write a mystery novel. I was real big into Hardy Boys, and my favorite was actually The Three Investigators, which their books are a lot harder to find. But I thought they had more distinct personalities than the Hardy Boys. I could never tell those two guys apart because they didn't really have distinct personalities. Maybe after the first 100 books they might have, but it's just they got a lot of books.
Yeah.
And so I tried writing that. I think I got 4 to 8 chapters in. I wish I knew what happened to that stuff because I took it off the Fiction Press at some point in time. I don't know. I don't have any record of it. And then also in junior high school, I actually tried to outline a fantasy story. I got 12 chapters outlined, 4 chapters written. I actually do have a copy of all that mess, and it's pretty hilarious how my writing was back then.
Revamp it, and I was going to say revamp it and put it into the world now.
That's kind of what I did. That premise is my first book. So
no way.
My Crimson Claymore was based off of that. So originally it was 12 chapter outline, 4 chapters written. Horrible title. All the characters pretty much stayed the same because I had those characters in my head for so long. So from middle school to probably about 20 years old, I think, is when I kind of pulled it out, revamped it, completely redid the outline. And I decided at that point that I was going to actually try and finish a book. So I'd always tinker around with NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, and try and write a book in a month, which when you haven't written a book before, or even if you have only written a couple, writing a book in a month just sounds insane. But I was determined I was going to do it. I was working night shifts at the time, and so I would bring a notebook to work, and I would just longhand a bunch of stuff between my job, and I ended up doing it. I hit 50,000 words, and it was about nearly complete at 50,000 words for a grand epic fantasy novel. So like it was kind of a little short for that kind of book. But I was actually 2 chapters shy, and I ended up putting it onto a website called Wattpad. Which is very popular among teenagers and middle schoolers especially because they can't afford buying books yet. And it's a great place for amateur writers and readers of low income to be able to read stories that are a little bit more amateurish because they're not edited professionally. A lot of them written by teenagers. And adults who do write there are, struggling to find their own voice still with, only 1 novel or less published. But it was a great place for me to get my start, and I published it on there. One of the administrators of the website ended up finding my book. Actually had found her and was reading her book and was commenting on the chapters, and so she checked out mine, and I guess it got her hooked pretty early because she sent me a message and said, "Hey, if you finish this book and put a cover on," I didn't have a cover on at the time, so just big old blank white square. She said if I finish it, that she would actually there's a new program that's starting on Wattpad back then. That was 2011, 10, I don't know, where they're going to feature books. And so I was one of the first 3 featured books. It was my book and 2 other people's books, and it was all different genres. Sure. And so whenever you went into the fantasy genre on Wattpad, my book was always the top spot every time. It was always my top spot where it had my book, The Crimson Claymore, the first book I ended up publishing, and then after that would be everyone else's titles, and that lasted for I don't know a year, 2 years. I think my book was featured on there, and I ended up getting over 2.5 million reads on it, over like 16,000 votes, and several hundred comments. I don't even know how many comments or reviews. It was 300-400 more. I don't know. I have over 6,000 followers, I think, on there. The problem that I had was So I got all that boost of confidence, and a lot of people were critiquing my stuff as well in a positive way, that I was able to, see what I was doing and fix it. And so it was a really good place for me to learn my writing craft. But as I was getting that boost of confidence, I tried, like, maybe I can actually do this. Kind of when I first felt like maybe I could be a published author, because it's always just something I enjoyed as a hobby. And so then I started pitching agents and publishers. And after hundreds and hundreds of rejections, I kind of gave it up for a little bit until I started learning about indie publishing. And that's when I decided, well, I already have a fan base, so I'm going to go ahead and just try and move this over. And the problem was I found out about indie publishing a little too late. And Wattpad attention span is real short, because it's people from junior high to middle school, or junior high, middle school, and then high school. And then once they graduate, they kind of become Amazon readers, and they don't really log on to Wattpad anymore. So I waited a little too long before I ended up publishing it, that I couldn't really, most of my followers already don't use Wattpad anymore. They're not even, they have accounts, but they're not even active anymore.
Right.
So that ended up hurting me. I was hoping I would just start out with a little bit more of a bang than I did, but I kept on pushing through, and that was my kind of my start on Wattpad. And I've always wanted to write ever since the first grade, and I've always wanted to be a published author. I'm still not full-time yet, but I'm gonna keep on pushing, keep on striving. 15 books published now since 2015 was late 2015 was when my first book came out.
That's amazing. And it's just so interesting to me to listen to your story. One, because I loved fan fiction, still love fan fiction. Actually, a couple folks and I do fan fiction Fridays, so that's fun. But yeah, love fan fiction. And the hearing about your background with Wattpad is so interesting to me, because I was a fanfiction.net person. I posted on there. I didn't really use Wattpad, but I've heard all of these kind of Wattpad success stories, but I don't actually think I've ever met someone who's like gotten as big as you've gotten on Wattpad. So this is super cool. Also, Wattpad is based in Toronto, which is where I'm originally from. And a friend of mine lives like right above it. And every single time I pass it, I'm like, one day I'm going to work there. So I just think it's like such a cool thing. Anyway.
Yeah, I love Wattpad. I even have because I helped start a men's club group on there called the Pub or something. I can't remember. But actually, they sent me a Wattpad shirt. So I have a Wattpad ambassador shirt in my closet hanging up somewhere. But yeah, they were great. I think that they've been pushed around a couple of times with different investors and stuff like that. Their website doesn't look the same as it did back then. Their app was always great, being able to read books. I used to read a ton of books on their Wattpad app. I'm not sure how it looks nowadays. I haven't really played with it too much. But their great thing about the Wattpad was the clubs. They're like little forums that you can go and you can chat to other authors and other readers and stuff. The only bad thing they had about that is it wasn't really good. You couldn't really use the forums to be able to chat to people on the app. It was just a reading app. So when you're not using the computer as much, you use your phone more. When you get to that stage in life, you don't really get in there too much. But I always have a great respect for Wattpad. It really did help me get on my feet for writing.
Yeah, it's amazing. All of those sites are just so amazing. And like you mentioned when you were describing it, like it really does make reading accessible, because reading, if there's not a library nearby, it's an expensive endeavor. It is. So yeah, I love Wattpad. But the next question I had for you, because you kind of mentioned being really into mystery, but you publish sci-fi fantasy now. So I was just wondering why that genre in particular? Why sci-fi fantasy? Is it just something you enjoy, or was that more of a decision based on what you were seeing kind of in the writing realm?
Well, as I said, I started out, my first kind of stuff I was writing was mystery. I also wrote some, I don't know if we could be considered like an adult mystery or something like that as well. When I was in junior high school, I got 4 chapters of that on a hard drive somewhere as well. But No, I've always loved fantasy and sci-fi, especially sci-fi actually, which is funny because I wrote fantasy first. But my first love was Star Wars. I grew up just love. I see got a poster in the background of Darth Maul over there, and the original Star Wars. I enjoyed the prequels, even though they had a lot of problems. I don't really enjoy much of what Disney has done to it, except for The Mandalorian. But I'm not going to get too much into the story flaws I find in that.
I could literally talk about it for hours, so we could. This could turn into a Star Wars, because I have similar feelings. It sounds like.
Yes. I've watched the original movies and nothing actually connects the dots. But the 789 will always be Grand Admiral Thrawn, who's an author, Timothy Zahn. His books would be the true sequels for me. So I started out loving Star Wars. I had an aversion to fantasy. I didn't much care for fantasy when I was younger. When I was in middle school, my oldest brother was actually trying to get me into Lord of the Rings. It's like, you've got to read these books. You've got to read The Hobbit first, and then read these Lord of the Rings. And at this point in time was when the movies were starting to come out. And I watched the trailer, and I was just watching it, and I just kind of looked at it like, I don't know. This doesn't. I just thought it was kind of silly that the whole world was imbalanced because of a ring. I just didn't get it at that point in time. And then later on, I finally read The Hobbit, and I enjoyed it. And I tried reading Lord of the Rings, and I struggled with it. and then I watched the movie, and there's a lot more action stuff going on in the movie. That the writing of the books is real slow, especially in the beginning of the series. So then I started looking into other sci-fi books or fantasy books. With a little more action going on, and so I got a lot into R.A. Salvatore. He writes a lot of Legend of Drizzt series. His stuff's great, very action based. And then I got into like Aragon from Christopher Paglioni with Dragon Riders and all that, and then from there it just kind of took off into a bunch of other stuff. And then as I've been grown up into adulthood, I've read a lot more fantasy, gotten into a lot more sci-fi as well, like Star Trek, Firefly, Farscape. Nothing to be as good as Firefly. It just sucks that they only had one season of it. And then The Orville is a new sci-fi show that started coming on, and I enjoy the humor in it from Seth MacFarlane. And I'm actually, the sci-fi series I'm writing is a bit of a humor sci-fi, so that's a little inspirational as well, watching that series. But yeah, I think the possibilities in sci-fi and fantasy, the magic systems are fun to play with. The science behind fantasy, and actually there are a lot of science in some of my fantasy stuff as well. Just how things tick and everything. Like my Dragonia series, I have them in the southern hemisphere. I have 2 suns and 2 moons, and so different little things like that. I've developed kind of a system for how the dragons actually use their elements. Oil from the uvula drops into their throat when they blow. Their breath is so hot it ignites I actually put some of that stuff. I just find that kind of stuff fascinating, as well as with those genres, you can ask the more difficult questions that you can't typically do in most other genre fiction. The questions that are hot topics, you can kind of address them in a way, not beating readers over the head with them or anything, but you can just address them in a kind of a new light. Well, what if in this world, this an alternative? That's easier to do in sci-fi and fantasy than other genres.
For sure. I think you froze a little bit there, but I think, well, on my end, sorry, you froze a little bit there. I know there's a storm rolling through. So no, I think you were just saying there's a way to address, sorry, could you repeat the last point?
You can ask more, the more hot topic questions in sci-fi fantasy than you can in regular genre fiction. All the hot topics that if you use regular genre fiction or like Here on Earth, or even urban fantasy or mystery or anything else, that they're kind of untouchable questions that you can actually be able to shine in a new light in both sci-fi and fantasy, in a, well, in this world, because of this, it works this way. Like Star Trek in the late 80s, early 90s, that had a lot of kind of hot topic questions at the time that they were able to address in a new and different way, because they've introduced, different planets, worlds, species, and everything. And you can do that more in fantasy and science fiction.
For sure. I mean, I love sci-fi fantasy. Those are the genres in which I write as well. Just, moving a little bit to your career, and I want to pick your brain about marketing, but because one of my all-time dreams is really to become a USA Today best-selling author. Can you tell us a little bit about like how that happened, with what books it was? Did you do any marketing to have that as the end goal, or was it something that was a little bit more organic, or was that like very much like, I'm going for this? I'm just really interested to hear kind of the story behind that.
Yeah, so I had a lot of author friends who were going for trying to hit a list. And so several friends I knew were going into these box set with a couple other authors, and they would go in and try and just market it like crazy to try and hit a list. And I thought, that'd be a really cool thing to try and do. Even if we don't hit it, getting that many sales, you can reach a lot of readers. So this one here was a box set called Wrath in Rome. It was about 15 of us total. I think it was this nice big box set, and we several of the authors I already knew pretty well, and then the rest of them we got to know each other really well over the year. So we actually put like a year-long pre-order on it and just marketed like crazy. And it was really a great experience, because then you learn what it actually takes. So my book that I had in it was my first Dragonia book, Dragonia: Rise of the Wyverns. And so that's the book that I had in the set. And you learn how much work it is. I mean, there was 15 of us or so, and every one of us was just putting our all into this, trying to get sales. And so here's the big numbers that you got to keep in mind if you want to try and hit a list. You have to have at least 6,000 sales within a week period. So if you have pre-orders, you're fine, because pre-orders count as day one sales. So you try and rack up as many pre-orders as you can. Then you try and just market like crazy during that 1 week, and you literally have a 1 week shot to try and get enough sales. And so we were breaking everything up to have different people do different stuff. And so some of us were focusing on Facebook ads, other people were focusing on BookBub ads. We had someone focusing on the Amazon ads, and we all poured a good bit of time, energy, and money into this. One of the guys especially dropped a lot of money on BookBub ads to try and, because he was also learning how to do them for himself. So in the beginning, it was more money that he was dropping, and then after that, it started to come back down as he was figuring them out. But yeah, we ended up breaking even. I think all the money that we made ended up just helping us after the money we spent. But it was a lot of fun. It was a good experience. Makes you learn that you need over 6,000 sales within a week period, and at least 500 of those have to come from someone besides Amazon for you to be considered as well. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And so it's made me want to, now that I know everything behind it, in the future, I'm going to give it a shot for one of my solo books. But I know how much work it is, so I need to get to a much further point before I do that. Actually, I do know someone, a personal friend of mine who lives not too far away, who hit the list off of her single book, and it was because she got a BookBub ad. And when she got a BookBub ad, she immediately just booked for that entire week just every other ad place she could find, Facebook ads, Amazon, just booked everything, and just dropped a ton of money onto it. And she ended up getting enough sales to hit it on a solo book. So I know it can be done. I know someone who's done it, but it would probably take a BookBub ad plus a lot more to get there.
I've heard those. I've done a BookBub, an international BookBub feature deal, but not the US one. But I heard the US one, if you get it, you can go, like, you can go for it.
Yeah. I think all of us authors really want to just throw $700 at them to take our ad, but every
Yeah.
time I'm just like, nope, you cannot give me, $500+ for me to put in here. But man, if they ever say yes, I'll find a credit card, because from everyone I've talked to, you get that money back like almost instantly.
Yeah, that's the same I've heard too. Even I did the international one, which is much cheaper. So it's Canada, UK, and a few other countries. It's like much cheaper than the American one. But even with that one, immediately, like same day, I made my money back on it. So I was like, okay, I'm happy with this. But yeah, they're expensive for sure. But that is so cool. I mean, congratulations. Like I said, it's totally my dream to be a USA Today bestseller. So that is so cool.
Here's the newspaper.
Oh my God, that is amazing.
So I got one of my newspapers. This is laminated, and I got the little cutouts from the set on Amazon. We hit number 46.
Wow, I was gonna say you hit 46. That is huge.
Yeah, the newspaper only shows you the top 50.
Okay.
After that, it's like on the USA Today website.
Yeah.
You can see it. But the fact that we actually got high enough that we hit the newspaper, I immediately went out to the store and bought all the newspapers. Sadly, they only had 2, so I had to cut one out to frame it like this, and the other one's just a full newspaper in my closet.
That's amazing. So cool. Oh, so cool. I mean, I guess we've hit on it a little bit, but like a big part of indie publishing, whether it be self-publishing or even with a small press, actually even the big traditional publishers now don't do all the marketing for authors. So like a big part of being an author is marketing. So I guess my question to you is like, what is your general approach when it comes to marketing? Is there something you like to focus on more, something you focus on less? Or are you still kind of in the phase of trying things
out? I know from experience and a lot of people that I've talked to that the number one focus needs to be your author newsletter. So that's kind of where I've been trying to put my focus into, getting good subscribers. And then I've been, I've heard a lot of great things about both Amazon ads and Facebook ads. So I've been getting into those more. I've done them in the past, but I'm really trying to figure them out right now. I'm in a couple of courses and classes for that. The main one is Mark Dawson's ads course, and he has Facebook ads and Amazon ads on there. Several other ones. I think he might even have BookBub ads in there. I haven't even touched that one yet because I've heard a lot of horror stories from BookBub ads. So you can get a lot of reach, but you spend a lot of money for BookBub ads, is what I've heard. So I haven't played with that too much, but I've been getting more into the Amazon ads and Facebook ads and learning how to do them. I'm trying to get my spreadsheets up to par to how I can, calculate stuff better, like my read through. When someone buys book 1, how many percentage go to book 2 and everything. I'm trying to get all that kind of stuff figured out. So my main focus is my newsletter, and I have a lot of author friends who are indie, a lot of author friends who are traditional, and you're absolutely right. They're not doing a whole lot for traditional publishing. It's not doing a whole lot to help their authors marketing wise. Obviously, it'll go out to their newsletter, and depending on the size of the newsletter, Tor has a huge newsletter, but then it's still got to appeal to those readers. Probably going to get mentioned. They're not going to do anything else to spike from your book, and then they will push into it. They follow the approach of throw a bunch of books against the wall and see which ones stick, and then lift it up. So from what I've heard from a lot of authors is no matter what, you got to do your own marketing. And at least being an indie author, I can actually see if my marketing is working, and I have more options to market, like AMS ads that I wouldn't be able to do. I think there is a more complicated way to do it, but then you're only getting like 20% of the net on that anyway through the publisher. So I want to experiment and actually get my books out there, both indie and published. I want to be a hybrid. I kind of do have a small publisher, kind of just a one-man publisher right now. I'm talking to another small publisher for another book. So I'm hoping to get as many different avenues out there as I can.
For
But
sure.
at least with my independent stuff, I'll be able to funnel my stuff to there, be able to see how it works, and then hopefully the readers will actually just branch off and look for other stuff by me.
Definitely. I've heard of, I mean, just to go back to Mark Dawson's course, I've heard Mark Dawson's course is amazing, but I've also heard on Mark Dawson's podcast, the self-publishing show or formula, I forget what it's called, that there have been like hybrid authors have found great success in doing that, getting audiences in both like trad and self, and then like having them cross over. And yeah, it's just super, super interesting. I guess a follow-up question to kind of your process, like what have you found the most success in so far when it comes to your marketing?
The most success I've had is definitely comes from my newsletter. I definitely see an uptick on my sales when I send out my newsletter. I've been trying to put a lot of work into it, getting organic readers. I make sure I have my my back matter and all my books up to date, for people to sign up to a newsletter. On the back, at the back of all my books, I put, so like my Dragonia books, I wrote like a little Dragonia short story with some of the characters that I put into an anthology, and I have the rights back for that now. So I actually tell people like a short little one sentence, hey, these two characters have a short story that's free to my subscribers if you join my newsletter, and I have a link at the back. Then each different series is something similar with a different story from that series, a little side story. And so I'm really trying to grab people who read my book and want to find out more about those characters and bring them into my newsletter. Mm-hmm. Between that and book funnel, I've been doing a lot of book funnel promotions as I'm figuring out that website more and more. You can get a lot of good readers there because it's a book funnel promo that all the authors who are involved send it out to the newsletter, and people will go to the page and they'll look for books that they find interesting, and they'll sign up. If you want to do even better of a job and not get people who don't want you, then you can even have the opt-in optional when people click on your book, and then you still have your back matter with the links to your newsletter as well. So if they decide not to opt in, but they read the book and they want to find out more, they can join your newsletter as well. So that's been the most successful. Second to that has been Facebook ads. I've been getting better at Facebook ads. I still need to work on mastering them, but I'm getting a lot better. I have a Facebook ad running now that's giving me a pretty good cost per click. I'm seeing a lot of comments on it. I'm making sure to respond to the comments, and I'm definitely seeing some traction from that. I'm still newer on the AMS ads. I'm actually learning how to use those properly. I'm doing the Brian Cohen method. He has an Amazon course. He suggests starting low on your bids at like 30 cents a bid, I think, and start really, really low and just get a ton of different things out there with all these different bids. And then you can actually get the data from them to see which ones are actually converting at that low percentage. And then you take all those keywords together and put them into one ad, and then you can start bumping it up a little bit. So I'm still in that beginning process of trying to get that figured out. But those are the top three in that order so far, and I hope to get even better at Facebook and Amazon ads because they're still a little bit newer for me to use.
Yeah, AMS ads for me is like, I know zero about it. I mean, I know they exist. I know people who use them, but yeah, Facebook ads I'm a little bit more familiar with. I haven't figured out I've had success with them on a small scale, but whenever I try and scale them up, they just don't work. So I think I'm pretty good at finding the niche target audience, but then I niche it down too much. And so as soon as I start to scale, I just lose money. But yeah, AMS ads though, they're another beast. I don't, yeah.
I've seen from several different people not to use their suggested bid, because their suggested bid is like an average or above average. And the way that the algorithms work, from what I understand, is they actually they push your ad more if you're actually getting clicks. So even if you're paying less, if I'm only paying 30 cents and someone else is paying, 80 cents for that same target, if theirs is being clicked 2% of the time, but mine's being clicked 50% of the time, they're going to show my ad over that person's ad. So it's all about getting your description set just right, getting your ad text set just right, and starting those bids low. And then as you get enough information, enough data to see what people are actually clicking from those keywords that you have, then scaling them up. So that's as far as I understand so far, but I'm still in the process of getting the hang of it.
And what is it with marketing that you struggle with the most, do you think? I feel like you kind of have to be like, I find, especially with self-publishing, you kind of have to be like a jack of all trades, and I am definitely not. So there's some areas that I'm just like, I suck at this. But I'm just wondering, like, what is it that you struggle with most? Because I think sometimes it helps folks to hear other people and their struggles, and also what they're doing to overcome it.
Yeah, marketing is a beast. I'm not a numbers guy. I think I failed geometry when I was in high school. I'm not the greatest math person. I started out my career my last career was doing pipe fitting. So there's a little bit of math involved of putting the pipes in together, like the Pythagorean theory. But then I went from doing that, and I've always been good with computers and stuff, just not math. And I went into pipe planning now is what I do for my day job, and I have to use Microsoft Excel like crazy for my day job. And so I'm learning a lot of stuff. So that's I have a lot of knowledge there, but that's going to be my hardest struggle, is trying to put what I need together into a spreadsheet to help me figure out these numbers. Because when you're doing ads, you have to see how much money you're making, but you can't just look at that number. You have to look at a read-through formula. So you have to see how many book ones you're selling, how much percentage of that converts down to book 2, and then book 3, and et cetera, as far down as you go. So that way you know that if you make X amount on book 1, if you're spending $10 on Facebook ads, and you're making only $9 back on your book 1, you have to put that read-through percentage into it to see how much you're actually going to make from that ad. So you have 50% people go to book 2, and then 90% people from book 2 to book 3. You have to put that equation into it to get it figured out of, I only made $9 book 1, but in reality, within 30 days, that is actually going to make me about $25.
Right.
So that trying to get all that stuff figured out, that's the hardest part, is trying to get all of that stuff figured out straight. I have a couple of spreadsheets that I have some of that information in, but I really have to better fine tune it, and that's my biggest struggle right now, is trying to look at the data, assess the data, see what the data is actually telling me, not what it looks like on face value.
For sure. I guess I suppose, like, it's a little, if you're spending $10 and seeing 9, that'd be a little nerve-wracking to see that face value. So I guess, and this wasn't really a planned question, but it's a little bit of a follow-up. Based on that, would you recommend people have a little bit of a backlist before they start playing around with ads, so that they can kind of see that read-through? Or is it something that, you would recommend for people to kind of jump into, play around with, even if they have a couple books out, 1 or 2?
I would say it depends on what your goal is. If your goal is to make money off of your books, I would wait to have a couple of more books under your belt. If your goal is to try and get readers, when you're not as concerned about the money, a lot of it depends on where you're at financially.
Right.
And so if you actually want to get readers, ads on the first book you put out, you can start for someone that's on pre-order if you're just trying to get people's attention. But I would at least have a newsletter sign up, a short story or something. So once people start getting your book, you can start bringing them into your readers. But yeah, you can definitely start early. You can wait till you have several more stuff. You're going to make better money if you actually have something that you can give a read through to. Otherwise, you are going to have to take your ads at face value.
Yeah, for sure. I apologize. I'm just going to ask, you said something about pre-orders. It just cut out like super slightly there. So is it for ads to get pre-orders? Is that what you were? What?
Yeah, I mean, you can run ads to get pre-orders. They're not going to convert as well as being able to hit the buy now button, but it can be done. And I've had a good bit of experience with that during that USA Today box set run. You definitely can get pre-order ads. I think we end up having 3,000 or 4,000 pre-order ads before the book went live. And it is possible. It costs a lot more money because most people, once they click on an ad, the first thing someone does when they click on an ad is depending on the type of ad, they look at your cover. So if it's a Facebook ad, 90% of Facebook ads don't have a book cover. They have a stock image because it converts better. For some reason, it just converts better.
I've heard that. So odd, but yeah.
Yeah, that or stock image with your cover on it somewhere.
Yep.
Either way, I've heard they just convert better. I've also heard strange things like just having a really bright, bad looking border helps it convert better. Like bright red all the way around it, or bright yellow all the way around it, or something bright. So when people are on their Facebook feed scrolling, they see that bright color just it makes them pause for a second. It looks tacky, but I've actually played around with a couple different ads, and I've actually seen that as well. So I think there's a little bit of truth to that. So the first thing they'll look at when they click on your ad is they're going to look at the cover. If the cover entices them, they're going to look at the description. And there's two parts to a description, which I've done a lot of studying on recently from people like Brian Cohen and Brian Meeks, who both write good blurb books, Amazon book descriptions and stuff. And you have two lines on that description. You have the first sentence, and you have the third sentence. And if you're doing your Amazon, if you're doing proper copywriting, you'll have a blank line between those two sentences. You don't want your text to be too crowded together. And so if the second thing they look at is that first line, which is your hook, and then the second line, which is your introduction hook. Then usually after that, they have to click the read more button to read anything more about your book. Right. So you have to have those first two sentences just spot on and grab someone enough that they want to click the read more to read a little bit more about your book. And then, another thing is your Amazon description is it's like an old movie trailer, not the new movie trailers that tell you everything, but the old movie trailers from the 90s and before were like, there's enough vagueness that you're like, what is this about? I want to see this. That's how your description has to be. So you can't just info dump your whole book. And it takes a lot of copywriting practice. I've been practicing a lot more trying to figure out how to do that. And then getting reviews from people helps. You can take what people say in the reviews and use that instead of what you want to say, and it helps. So that's the second and third thing to do is the description, to read more. And then the fourth thing they do is they go over and they click the buy now button. So each one of those steps is a pause where you can lose their attention. And if that says pre-order instead of buy now, that will lose a percentage.
Yeah.
So you already have to go through so many steps to get there. For a reader, and a reader's attention spans with TV, Netflix, movies, it's already a lot lower than it used to be. So you really have to grab them in. And so pre-order ads can be done, but it's going to convert at a less percentage than the buy now ads.
That's so interesting. I really like the way you approach that. Like each step is a different, and every single time somebody has to do something and make a decision, it's a point where you could possibly lose someone. Yeah, no, that's super, super interesting. Yeah, I have a pre-order up right now, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to even try ads with this. I'm not doing any ads right now. So it's really, I'm just like absorbing all this, and it's so helpful. I love it. So, I mean, there's so many, marketing is so massive and so overwhelming. And I mean, you were talking about Excel, and then there's the newsletters, and what do you use to send the newsletters? Like, are there any marketing tools that you use that are like tried and true and you love them and you would recommend them to other people?
Marketing tools. If you have the money, taking a good ad course is a very valuable tool. Mark Dawson's ad course is very great. It's on the pricier end. It's several $100s. I can't remember exactly, but I mean, he's got Amazon ads in it, BookBub ads, Facebook ads, several other just snippets too, like how to make your ads pop. I actually have a cover designer come on there and do a little episode of how to, how to make your ads using different software, different people that they interview, like the person who wrote Newsletter Ninja. That's another tool that I recommend, is the Newsletter Ninja book by Tammy Laberkey. I'm probably getting that pronunciation wrong, but that book is fantastic. The Brian Cohen has a great ad course. I haven't got into that one yet, but I'm planning on taking that as my next course. But I've met Brian in Vegas last year. 20 Books to 50K is a great conference for authors who are doing their independent stuff. And I was there last year. I met Brian. I've talked to him over many years. I've known him for a good bit. He's a good guy, and I've got all of his introductory classes that I've been studying with notes, and I'm going to get into his class here soon. I'd say that's a great tool. Brian Cohen's book about blurbs, about how to write blurbs, that's a great tool, resource to use, as well as Brian Meeks writes a book about blurbs as well. Amazon descriptions, I think, is what he calls it. That's a really great book as well. Just trying to really tone down your blurb, like I was saying earlier. That blurb, that little description on Amazon, it has to convert people. And a lot of times you'll find out that when your ads aren't converting, it's because of your blurb. So that's something I've been struggling to get better at. Then I got, a podcast like Six Figure Author Podcast is a great one that I listen to. It was originally the Science Fiction Fantasy Marketing Podcast with Lindsay Broker, who's a big fantasy sci-fi author. Actually, I met her in Vegas as well. That's a great one. The Creative Pen Podcast, that's a good one. There's a Chrome extension, some kind of list grabber. I can't remember the name of it right now. I meant to write it down, but I forgot. But there's this Chrome extension for your computer that it looks like I know that the icon looks like a Pokeball.
I have it. It is
great.
Book Report. Is it Book Report?
I don't think so.
It's like a colorful Pokeball.
It looks like a Pokeball.
Looks like a Pokeball.
I can't recall, but it's a Chrome extension, and what it does, it's some kind of list grabber. It'll grab stuff from web pages. Now, Amazon keeps their web page super tight and secure. That doesn't really work too well for Amazon, but Goodreads it does. And so what you can do is you can actually look under Goodreads Listopia, where people make these massive lists of different genre of books, and it's really defined like, epic fantasy or humor sci-fi, and you can really just click on one of those lists, and it has, a page of 50 where it has all the titles and all the authors that are there, and you use this little list grabber tool, this little extension for Chrome, and what it will do is it'll grab the pages. You can set it to start on the first page, and it'll find where that next button's at, and you might have to help it find where the next button's at, and then it'll just keep on clicking that next button, and it'll grab as many pages as you want it to grab, and then it spits it out into an Excel spreadsheet, and it's all sorted by these different columns. So you have like the title of the book, then you have the author name, and then you have all these other different columns, and so you can take that data and you can make that into keywords. You might have to do a couple of formulas to get rid of the series name on the title, which you can look up those formulas, but you cut the titles out, and you cut you have the authors, and you just take all those and put them into your AMS ads that they want you to have 150 keywords. Well, you just grab 50 keywords from that export, you put it in there, and you make sure that the things are selected to where it'll turn one keyword into 3 total keywords, because it's like exact match, vague match, and partial match, or something like that. So you can use that stuff to actually get your keyword started with Amazon ads, which is something that I've been doing with my 30-cent ads. So that's a great tool.
That's so interesting. That is not Book Report, but that is so interesting, because then you're seeing, like you said, you have the list from Goodreads. It's what people are reading. It's the genre that's relevant, and then you can come up with the keywords. Wow, that's okay. I'm going to come back and rewatch this when I decide to finally dive into ads, because that's super interesting. Those sound like a lot of really amazing tools, and it's just, there's so many, right? So it's great to hear what other people recommend, because it's so easy to fall in the trap of getting something or buying something that's like not really legit, or hasn't had a proven success rate or whatever it may be. So no, thank you so much for suggesting those. I only have a couple questions left, so I want to remind the folks in the chat. I see some questions there, and the folks watching that if you do have any questions for Craig, please let us know in the chat because I just have a few questions. And Craig, I wanted to ask you what you're working on, but I think we'll save that to the end, and so we can sign off with that a little bit. But so the next question that I have for you is any advice to new authors when it comes to marketing, new and aspiring authors when it comes to marketing?
Do your research. Try and absorb as much as you can. If you can get the hang of a lot of this stuff before you get started, it does help a lot. I've absorbed a lot of information, and I listened when I was doing pipe fitting on the shipyard. I would have headphones in. Because it was just it was a labor job, so I would just I would listen and just absorb information. I've listened to, hundreds of the Creative Pen episodes. There's one back in the day called Rocking Self-Publishing. That was a great one. I listened to all of those. The Writing Excuses with Brandon Sanderson. It's more writing rather than marketing, but a lot of great world building, all kinds of other things in there in those short episodes. Just trying to learn as much as you can, write down some stuff, put some stuff into practice. Just find as much great resources as you can. There's a lot of free stuff out there like podcasts and websites that'll get you so far. But then when you get into the ad courses, that's I'm always skeptical about getting the ad courses myself, just because the price tag and my finances and everything. But it's a community there, and I've really seen that once I joined my first one. There's a private Facebook group that's way more active than any of those free Facebook groups. That you can literally ask a question and a bunch of people come in there and help you through everything. And so that's kind of something you got to think about that's added on to those things like courses, that you get a lot more one-on-one attention to really get those questions answered and helped through them. As far as like writing stuff, trying to write your first books and everything, or even if you've only written a couple books and you want to get better at writing, I would say some valuable tools that I've used is Scrivener. I love using Scrivener. I used to do formatting in Microsoft Word for my early books, and that was horrendous. Microsoft Word does a lot of funny things to you when you're trying to format. So Scrivener is great. For formatting, I actually use a tool called Vellum now, which is Mac only.
So good.
Yes, it is worth every penny. It's a pricier program, but the stuff it can do with formatting, and some authors know just that they don't even use Word or Scrivener. They just write straight into Vellum. So that's something you can do as well.
Okay.
and then another app that I use here lately is called a Story Planner app. It's only for the Mac and the iPad, iPhone, or whatever, which I don't have an iPhone, so I can't sync it to everything, but it syncs to my Mac that I purchased just for Vellum, Vellum and Scrivener, because it has Scrivener 3 for Mac when you only have Scrivener 2 for Windows. So I have this the Story Planner app on my laptop, and then I have an iPad as well, and it does beautiful outlines. You can actually have different characters. And then you can have different descriptions and scenes for your stuff, and you can put all that stuff in there, and you can even add pictures for all your characters, and then you can export it as a Microsoft Word file, and you can open it up in a Word document to print out, and it all nice, beautiful, organized all the way down. You can export it into a Scrivener file, and then immediately start writing on the book after you do all this extensive outlining. So I've been doing that here recently, and it's been helping my productivity for sure.
And those all just sound so amazing. Before we hop into the questions from the audience, because I see Nathalie has asked a couple questions there. If you could go back to the day before you published your first book, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh man, there's a lot of stuff I would have done differently, especially I guess learning the different areas out there was my biggest pitfall. I kind of I started indie publishing before I knew. I listened to a couple podcasts a good bit, but I really didn't do as much extensive research as I wish I would have. I would have launched my my first books differently. I would have tried to. I would have finding more resources for cover designers, especially when you're starting out, trying to find cover designers in your budget. And trying to learn all that kind of stuff, learning about pre-made covers and how cheap they are, and you get them quick. And I've had some books where I've had just absolutely great cover designers, but a couple of them are slower at getting their stuff to you because they're new and their stuff turned out great. But if I would have known, I would have had them do a later series that I had in mind, and then just try to get some other covers to begin with, or just wrote different books in the front end while those covers are being made. Stuff like that, just the market research of finding that information, book covers, stock art, cover design, pre-made covers, editors, trying to find editors. When I was first starting out, I didn't know how to find an editor, and when you first start looking for editor, you see all these big prices because they're either big published editors or they're really big indie editors. When you're starting out, you just need to get yourself a good, decent editor, but not one that's going to break the bank. You can work on doing that, later in your career once you get enough stuff out there. Getting my stuff together more to where I could, which a lot of that had to do with covers and editing, but be able to get my stuff out there quicker instead of the long delays for my first series that ended up being a result of me being a little bit slower as an author and all the other stuff that went into it that I didn't know fully at the time.
Yeah, it sounds like, well, clearly it's worked out. 15 books, that is absolutely amazing. And I think a lot of folks are going to take away, whether they're watching live right now or whether folks are going to be watching in the future. I think a lot of people will be able to take away a lot of great advice from today. So I'm just going to hop over to the comments. I see there's a bunch of questions. So Natalie was asking, do you play homage to your writing in any of the worlds you've been a fan of over the years, i.e. Star Wars?
All right, so I did mention that, that my sci-fi series that I'm writing is a humor sci-fi series. So it's got a lot of jokes in it. There's so my sci-fi series is a bit like Star Trek, Discovery, Exploration, but it's also a bit like Star Wars because I have a space mage, because why wouldn't you have a space mage? So my main character just jokes with him during the whole thing about, hey, do you sense anything in there with the Force? And he's just like, I'm not a Jedi. It's like, you're a space mage. What's the difference? And so I have a lot of jokes from different old songs, old TV shows, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. I have a lot of lines that are from those movies or songs or shows or whatever that are just tweaked a little bit to fit my story. Just as a fun inside joke for myself, and I have a lot of fun writing those. So yeah, I pay a lot of homage, especially in that series, to a lot of stuff that's influenced me over the years.
Very cool. Yeah, I think it's always fun to. In a similar way, like things that have inspired me, I like to pull inspiration from them, and it's always kind of like a nice little nod to everything that has come before that you've thoroughly enjoyed. So Natalie was asking what goes into a newsletter, and I'm actually also going to ask that question because I struggle, and I was just having this conversation on a Discord group that I'm in earlier today. People were asking what do you put in your newsletter? And I'm like, that's a great question. I don't really have a set thing of what I put in my newsletter. Also, I'm terrible at newsletters. So please, I would love to hear what goes into your newsletter.
Newsletters are they're a skill to get the hang of, and I'm still getting better at mine. But a great book to check out would be The Newsletter Ninja by Tammy. There's also a good one, self-published strong. Andrea Pearson is the author. She wrote one called Rockin' Solid Newsletter or something. That one's a good resource as well. But so if you're an author and you're making a newsletter, you got to remember that you're an author and you're making a newsletter. So you have to actually put your creative writing into that newsletter. And you don't just want it, you want them to get the feel of your writing and your personality with what you're putting out. You want it to be in your voice. You don't want it to be stock. And for an introvert, which, I'm an introvert. I have grown out of my introversy a lot, especially I was in a local writers guild down here in Mobile, Alabama, where I was the president of that guild for a couple of years. I was vice president for a year, and I actually had to get up there on stage in front and actually begin the meetings. And so, that kind of helped me break out of my shell a bit. But you have to write with your personality showing. Any of your likes, your dislikes, just put them out there. I would stay away from, some of the hotter topics, politics and all that. You really don't want to segregate your list to any special stuff that the country is split on 50-50 or close to. But, if you love cats, if you love dogs, a funny story that you would tell your spouse about, hey, guess what the cat did 5 minutes ago. You put that in your voice into your newsletter. If you anything that you go out, you see, if you so one of the things that's in one of my first newsletters is I have my bird feeder outside on the opposite side that I have it on now. And instead of the birds coming to eat it, the squirrel would climb up the back screen of the outdoor and hop on this bird feeder and eat. And that's something I put into my newsletter with a whole lot of distraction. Look, a squirrel. And I just ramble in my newsletter and I tell that story as I'm rambling. But yeah, you got to put your voice into it. Any TV shows, movies that you like, that you've been watching, that you've been binge watching, or any books that you've been reading or listening to an audio. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. Just put that into your own voice in the newsletter. Give your thoughts. No one's gonna ban you from sending newsletters just because you tell them I didn't. Don't be hateful, of course, but I didn't care for the new Star Wars from Disney. And you just give them your honest opinion in a nice way of what you thought about different things in your own voice, and then ask them those questions. Well, what did you think? So not too long ago, I went through and I watched the Next Generation of Star Trek. I watched all those episodes, and I told my newsletter that I watched them, and I asked them what their favorite Star Trek was, what their favorite episodes were. Have you watched this? What other shows do you like? And I get a lot of feedback and response from those people, and then I read through them and I respond to all those people. You got to put your own voice and what you're actually doing into it. If you don't have a book, some people think I don't have new books. I'm not going to email my list. You don't have to have a new book to email your list. You can have just something fun to talk about that happened to you. And then if you have a book, you can put it in, or if you work on a book, you can put it in. If you don't have a book, you can have a couple short stories that you're working on. You can just show them snippets of, hey, here are my words today. I thought this was a great paragraph that I wrote. What do you think? Just throw that in there, and as well as your story and what fun adventure you had within the last week or two.
That's so awesome. Follow up, how long do you spend on your newsletter? Because it's so, I don't know, I find writing my newsletter so intimidating. So I'm just really interested to hear.
When I first started doing my newsletter, especially when I started doing the research of how to make my newsletter better, it would take me a while to write it. It would take me, my first newsletters take me several hours to write. Now it takes me 30 minutes or less, because I've found my newsletter voice. Another thing that helps is getting together a really good autoresponder segment, which if anyone doesn't know what that is, you set up your newsletter to where once someone joins, it automatically sends them an email, and then you can set up multiple going down. Okay, then after that email, 2 days later, send them another email, and here's that email. And I'm still working on my autoresponder. I think I have it 6 long now, and I need to make it 8 long because I need to put a reader survey in there, but I haven't gotten that far yet. But yeah, each one just kind of introduces the reader more to you, and then you talk about your books. but you talk about them one at a time. You don't want to just have your first newsletter slam them in the face with, here's all my stuff, look at it, here it is. So what I actually do is that, and a lot of people to join my list, they get a free book. So I actually stagger my free books as well and say, hey, here's this short story from my Dragonia world. Thank you for joining my list. In 2 or 3 days, you're going to have, I'll send the free short story of, this story, and actually, put that there. So that way they can, oh, well, I want to read that one too. They know to check their email in 2 days or 3 days or whatever day you put there. And then, so on top of each newsletter having a different little freebie short story that I give them, I also make sure I talk about one of my series. So like my first newsletter might come out, I'll talk about my Crimson Claymore books. There's 6 books in the series, but there's really 3 books in the trilogy. So I kind of will talk about that world. And then like my next newsletter comes out, I'll talk about my Dragonia series and the world I went into that. My next newsletter, 2 or 3 days after that, we'll talk about the co-author books I wrote with Angelique Anderson, the Dragon's Call series. Then my next newsletter that comes after that, I'm going to talk about my sci-fi series that I'm working on now. So I stagger that with a short story while telling them a little bit about my life, how I became an author, in my own voice, what my likes and dislikes are, and so that way they go through this auto sequence to get to know me, and then once they're through that and read all those emails, then they'll be getting my new emails that I send out to everybody, and they already kind of know who I am. So that also takes a lot of work off of me without having to. If you don't have an autoresponder, someone joins and the first email they get is just something where you send it out. They don't really know you yet. So having that,
right.
have the autoresponder is very helpful. And I actually, I used MailChimp to begin with, and then I went to MailerLite, and actually now I'm with a place called SendFox because I found that to be the best price because you don't have to pay a monthly fee. You pay for how many subscribers that you want to have one time, and then you're done. So that's who I use now.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, they can get so expensive. I was with MailChimp and then left MailChimp because I was like, oh, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like the immediate response, I forget what you call them because I've looked into that and setting that up. I have one now, but I like kind of how you say, set it up so people can get to know you over time, get to know your books. That's really, really interesting. We've got 2 more questions in the chat. We are going a little bit over time. Are you okay to stay?
Yeah, I'm all right.
Awesome. I just want to make sure. So we've got one more question for Natalie and then a question from Casey. So Natalie is asking, how do you go about getting an advanced reader review?
Advanced reader. That one's more difficult in the beginning because for you to find advanced readers, you have to have readers, and when you're at the very beginning, it's a struggle to find those readers. A couple of different things you can do is there's a website called Library Thing, which is similar to Goodreads, but they haven't bought by Amazon yet. But there's a website called Library Thing where you can give away. You can still give away paperback books for free, unlike Goodreads nowadays. You can give away ebooks for free. You can give away audiobooks for free. So they actually have a setup. It's not as popular as Goodreads, so you're not going to get as many people that if they saw it on Goodreads would sign up. But they give you their email addresses when it's all said and done. If you send them an ebook, you get their email, and so you can try and get them to here's some ARC readers. Here's the book, and then for sending out ARC books, I would say make sure you have BookFunnel. It's the best place you can actually have one of those. In the beginning, I was sending movies to people, and that's horrendous. Go ahead and get early, start on BookFunnel or at least one of the other sites that's similar. There was one called InstaFreebie. What's it called? PublishWorks now or something, I think. But something like that where it's automated, where you send out. But BookFunnel is the best one, and get that set up. So you can use places like Library Thing to get those, and then of course, as part of my automation sequence, I actually put in a a call to action for advanced readers. So where I say, hey, would you like my books for free for life? Here is how you get them. And I explain to them that I will give free books to people who actually have a track record of reviewing my books. So to get into that list, you have to review one of my books on Amazon and either give me a link to the review or a picture of your review, something so I can verify it. I do that for two reasons. I usually try and do it to make sure that they actually can review on Amazon. There's a lot of people out there who can't because of various issues, which I won't get too much into, but I will say don't have the same email for KDP and Facebook. Make sure those are different emails because they will track you through Facebook, and if they think someone's a friend because you've interacted with them before, they will ban that person from reviewing your books.
Yep.
So that's one way. There's also there's some places out there that that are actually ARC review places, like what is it, NetGalley, I think is one. I think they're on the higher end of how much it costs. There's
so expensive.
Yeah, that one's kind of outrageous. There's one that's it's not cheap, but it's a lot better priced. Is called Hidden Gems, I think. They do ARC reviews. I've actually used them and got good results from reviews on that. The problem is they work better because they can't just have a whole ton of books up at once. So like I was trying to get one on my new sci-fi book, and it's like, yeah, we might be able to squeeze you in before the end of the year. And I'm like, I booked this like 3 or 4 months ago. I'm like, wow, their book's solid. So that's something I have to get in early. Yeah, it's really hard to build that advanced reader team. But once you get them, it's great. And what I can do now is I publish my paperback book first, and then I go through and have them review on the paperback. Because readers can't review on your pre-order.
Right.
Amazon won't let anybody review on unless you're a big publisher. They let those slide by. But for an indie author, you cannot have readers review on your ebook if it's still in pre-order. However, if you publish your paperback first, you can have reviewers go to your paperback link and put reviews on Amazon on the paperback link before your ebook actually goes live. So that's what I do when I try and get a couple of reviews. That way on day one when it comes out, I already have 5, 10, 15 reviews on it.
That's so interesting. I've never heard somebody kind of like purposely, because sometimes they go live at different times just because Amazon, but I've never heard somebody purposely do that to be able to get the reviews on it. That is so smart, and I actually might use that for my next release. That's so good. All right, so the last question that we've got here is from Casey, and Casey is asking, an author now has their first book out. What do you wish you knew about audiobooks that you know now?
Audiobooks are fun. I have 5 audiobooks out now. There's a lot to go into audiobooks. Really, you want to be able to have money before you go into it, because the royalty share system, which is what most of my books are, is a little bit harder to navigate, and trying to get a narrator on board for both joint going out there, and the way that Audible ACX into Audible, which is Audiobook Creation Exchange, and the way that they used to work is audiobooks are the biggest market, biggest growing market. And so like for the past 5 years at least, they've seen double-digit growth every year in the past 5 years.
Yeah.
And usually high double-digit growth, like 20%, not low 10%. So it's been growing so well that what Audible's used to do, what they were doing, was they would give you free codes to give out to readers, and they would pay you for those codes. And when people first get into it, they don't understand, why am I getting money for giving out a free audiobook? But then you got to really step back and look at it through Audible's perspective. Audible is right now in the business of trying to get people addicted to audiobooks. That is the cheapest way they can market to get people sucked in, is to just say, okay, yeah, we'll give you a couple dollars for each code you give out, because now that's going to suck someone into getting a subscription and sticking with Audible. But now I think they figure they got enough listeners in. Maybe the double digits are going down a little bit right now, which is not surprising with the pandemic going on, because not as many people are listening. That's usually a commute and watch, a day job thing.
Mm-hmm.
I used to listen to a lot more audiobooks than I do right now, so I can attest to that. So it's a lot harder to get those kind of royalty share deals now, because now the narrator used to be able to guarantee X amount of money from half the royalty of the free codes, both his free codes and your free codes. And if you were together getting those free codes out, then you guarantee to make X amount of money. And then the rest, you're just hoping to push out to organic sales. So if you're getting started now with audiobooks, that's something to keep in mind. But having the money to pay outright per finished hour rates are anywhere from $200 per finished hour to $400 to plus and beyond, depending on what narrator you get. So it's expensive. Having some money aside for doing something like that. Marketing audiobooks is a little bit more difficult. There are places you can go. If you're wide through like Findaway Voices and stuff, they have places like chirp.com, which is actually BookBub's audiobook site. You can run deals through there. I've heard good stuff from those. If you're new in audiobooks, if you go exclusive through ACX, you will not be able to put your book anywhere else for a 7-year contract. And from what I've been told, that 7-year contract does not just fall off. You actually have to like email them and when you're getting close and say, hey, I want out. Mm-hmm. So they don't make it easy opt-out button. So that's something to keep in mind. However, they give you 40% for being exclusive and only 25% for taking your book other places. So that's another thing you have to put into consideration. Is Audible is still the top dog when it comes to audiobooks. Other people are breaking out. Kobo has audiobooks now. Chirp has audiobooks. Barnes & Noble, I think Google Play has audiobooks you can listen to now. You don't have to worry about iTunes, because iTunes is Audible contract. So iTunes is actually part of Audible. If you go through ACX exclusive, you will be there. So when you're getting into first getting into audiobooks, and you have to put a lot of stuff in mind. Do you have the money to pay outright? Can you actually find someone to do royalty share with because of all those new stipulations and not as much money as you would get in the past? Plus, 7-year exclusive contract, you cannot go wide with a royalty split situation. They have a new one that's called royalty share per finished hour, where you pay like a lower per finished hour rate to do royalty share. I think Findaway Voices has that as well, but then you won't be exclusive. But then again, you have to find a newer narrator who is willing to take a chance on you. And you have to actually understand audiobooks to be able to talk to your narrator through the audiobooks. I've listened to hundreds of audiobooks, so I wasn't picky by any means, but I knew what voices I wanted. I did not want Ben Stein doing a dry eyes commercial for my books. I wanted Robin Williams doing 500 different characters for my books. So I know which ones held my attention better when listening to them. And don't have to do a different, completely unique voice for each character, but you have to have those differences to where it sounds, the pitch is different. You can tell it's different characters talking. Audiobooks are a very much an art and a talent. Mm-hmm. And finding a good narrator is going to help your book sell better than the writing of your book. Especially if you get a bigger narrator, because once narrators get so far in their career, listeners follow narrators. And R.C. Bray is a really big narrator. People just, anything that he narrates, they'll just listen to it.
Yeah, I was actually just speaking about audiobooks in the past 2 episodes of the IndieVerse with an author who's found success with audio, and then also an audiobook narrator. So it's really, audiobooks are just like so big right now.
Yes, I love audiobooks, and I will say that I have some great narrators from audiobooks. My Creme de Claimer audiobook is done really well. My Dragoni audiobooks, that guy, he sounds like he should be doing the movie trailer in a theaters. I mean, fantastic job with it. And actually, I have another good narrator coming to my SciFi series later this fall that I've signed with a small publisher. So that won't be out of pocket for me, but I'm going to be doing just as much work marketing that as well. And I actually have a whole marketing plan for my audiobooks, a special spreadsheet for codes and all kind of stuff, which is a little obsolete now that they've changed that. But now it's kind of more important to find people to review your audiobook with the codes than actually just getting them out. So the process has changed a bit, but there's still marketing that goes involved with that as well.
For sure. Yeah. Oh, such an interesting space. Well, Craig, I want to thank you so much for coming on today and spending literally almost an hour and a half with us. It was such a pleasure to hear about all of the things you're doing. And I'm just going to, turn it over to you to tell us a little bit about what you're working on now, promote anything you want to promote. And I just want to let everybody who's watching now know that you can find all of Craig's information down in the description box below. I think website, Twitter, and Facebook is all there. So make sure that you go and click on those links and check them out. So with that, Craig, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so I was just going to show you a couple of my books that I was talking about earlier. So my first fantasy series here, I'll go with the actual first book I wrote. So the one that I put on Wattpad was The Crimson Claymore. So that's my first book in that series. Think R.A. Salvatore's action meets Terry Goodkind's humor, because I have a snarky wizard in that series. Book 2 is The Obsidian Arrow. And then book 3 in that series is The Violet Flamberge. And then I wrote a couple of shorter stories in that same world, like The Chronicles of Starlin, and Heart of the Kachani, and then Victoria's Grave. So that's all of my Claymore of Calthoria world. That was my first series that I really put a lot of work into.
Gosh, I can't wait until I have that many books.
And I've got a couple of them in audio. I have the Heart of the Kachani in audio that's available on Audible. And my Crimson Claymore, book 1, is an audio as well. And then my Starlin is also an audio. And then my first co-author series. Actually, I've had 2 co-author series. This one went a little bit better, and we ended up completing the series. So this one here is Dragon Sword with Angelique Anderson, published by Craig Martell, who's a big indie author in the world of indie publishing. And Dragon Bow is book 2. And then Dragon Scepter is book 3.
I can't believe I'm going to ask this, but I'm going to ask this. Do you have a favorite of all your books? Or a favorite series? Because you have multiple series.
I'd say I'm having a lot of fun with my new sci-fi series right now, but I think my favorite series is my Dragonia series. It's been my most well-received, and I wrote it with my son in mind. So my son is 12 years old now, and I wrote it when he was 10, 11 years old. So my first fantasy series it's not graphic or anything, but it's I'll probably give it to him later in high school. It's
right.
Everything behind closed doors. And was like, no, I don't think I want you to read this yet. So that was the first series I kind of wrote with. It's all adult characters. It's adult epic fantasy, but it's more like adult high fantasy because they're shorter books, 50 to 60,000 words. But and I still had a lot of fun with the world building and the magic system and how the dragons use their elements and everything. But I wrote it to where he'd be able to comprehend it and understand it, and it would be too violent or graphic for him. So I'd say that's probably my favorite series that I've written. And that series here, Dragonia: Rise of the Wyverns, is book 1. And let's see, Revenge of the Dragons, book 2. And The Dragonstone is book 3. And I got the first 2 in audio.
Nice.
But actually, the first 3 are in audio because they're in an omnibus with a different cover. So you actually got 3 books, like 17 hours long audiobook. And then my new series that I'm writing, Ghost Pro. This is my humor sci-fi series. So this one I'm having a lot of fun with, a lot of humor.
The title's great. I love it.
Yes. Ghost Probe, Ghost Surveillance is book 2. I just finished that, waiting for the editor to get that back to me. Way of Thieves, this was a fun one that I wrote. I wrote this one with a co-author. She ended up giving the rights back to me. I need to work on outlining book 2 and 3. This one was a fun book to write. It's Game of Thrones meets Ocean's 11. Bunch of thieves going on a heist. That was a lot of fun to write. So I got to get back to that.
Love heists. So fantasy heist?
Yes, fantasy heist.
Oh, love it. Love it.
This one here is actually an older book. It was my try at, I guess, more of a paranormal romance. I don't even have it up anymore. I'm planning on rebranding it, new cover and stuff. The art here is great, but it just doesn't hit the genre market of that genre. So it's another book of mine. I think just a old anthology book's the only one I ain't left over here. This was published by Craig Martell. My Dragonia short story is in here that I give out to my newsletter now. This one's still available in paperback, but all the ebook has been taken down to give back to the authors. So those are all the books that I have. I have a good bit of them now and several audiobooks, and been having a lot of fun during my publishing adventure.
Very cool. Well, I cannot wait until I have a library of my own books like you do. I'm working on book number 2 right now, so we'll get there eventually.
Yeah. Keep writing and don't give up.
For sure. But Craig, thank you so much for coming on today. Everybody, again, for those watching now and for those watching later, Craig's information is all in the description box below. So make sure you go check out his website, check out his books, because that's definitely what I'm going to be doing literally right after this. So thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. It was lovely having you, and thank you for all the questions. And thank you again, Craig. It was such a pleasure. And we'll talk to everybody later.